Hi, my name is Sid, and I'm done with Marvel. Now, I know this isn't a particularly original or unique opinion to have, and before some of you come for me for shitting on Marvel by saying, oh, it's just a guy flying around in tights and a cape, it's not that serious. Listen, I don't believe that every movie I watch needs to be intellectually stimulating. I wouldn't have watched Tall Girl 2 the other night if that was the case. In fact, sometimes I think that some cinema needs to be less intellectually stimulating. But there is absolutely something to be said about a film and television powerhouse that doesn't even stop to breathe, let alone consider the fact that their oversaturation of the superhero market might actually be working against them. So, today, we are going to talk about how Marvel's writing, visual effects, and political messaging come together to create So as we all know, the writing in the MCU has gotten so much worse as time has gone on. Or has it? I pondered the fact that perhaps the writing in the MCU has stayed constant, however, my aging has made it feel like the quality has decreased over time. For the most part, every Marvel movie has the same plot anyways. Some dude goes from dad bod to like getting jacked. They have some gritty backstory. There's a suit or a spaceship or powers that get discovered. There's a villain and I don't know, they fail the Bechdel test. There's not, what I'm trying to say is there's not much differentiation between plot over time. So if we're basing the writing of the Marvel movies on plot alone, you're not going to see much of a change. However, I feel like most of the discourse recently has been about the dialogue of the Marvel movies and how the one-liners have gotten cheesier and the dialogue is just generally worse. So in order to compare this for myself, I took a look at the MCU's first movie, Iron Man, and compared it with their most recent movie, Thor: Love and Thunder, both of which I had seen previously. So 2 movies, 14 years apart. In my rewatches, I expected to see updated dialogue in Thor: Love and Thunder to kind of keep up with the times, and maybe some more outdated dialogue in Iron Man, and maybe a reference to TikTok in the new one. I don't know. I saw it in the theaters this summer and I was disappointed, so I'm not really looking forward to watching it again, but let's do it. Okay, y'all, I need to come clean about something. I actually did not watch all of Thor: Love and Thunder, and I did not watch all of Iron Man, and I'm not gonna. Look, I have already given these people over 100 hours of my time. I've seen all the movies, I've seen some of the shows, so at this point, they're just gonna get what they're gonna get. But from what I did rewatch, I liked Iron Man. I mean, I think it's a great first chapter of a book that ultimately drags on way too long, but I mean, it was from 2008. Its worst offenses were a few off-color jokes and exposition via PowerPoint slideshow. Now, I was pretty generous on what I would let slide from Iron Man because it was the first movie from the MCU, but I expected a lot more from Thor: Love and Thunder when I first saw it, and so on the rewatch it was even worse. Actually, that's a lie. I went into the theater with very low expectations, and somehow I was still disappointed. Knowing that this was a Taika Waititi movie, I really wanted to like this. I love What We Do in the Shadows, so I was going into this with high hopes for Taika, but I was kind of let down. I think this is some of his worst work to date. I mean, 14 years later, we're still relying on the expositional montage like we were in Iron Man, not once, but twice in 30 minutes. And the comedic crutch of the entire movie is a meme from 2011. Like, are you listening to this shit? Do you know how many times they put this fucking sound in the movie? They put it in like 50 times, I swear to God, and they don't shut up ever. And it's not funny, and it's stupid, and it's not funny. The rest of the comedy came from Natalie Portman's character trying to tell jokes, and I think it was trying to come across in a so bad it's good kind of way, but to me it just felt like Taika did not want to fully flesh out and develop an arc for Jane's character, and so he was just being a little lazy with her lines. And that was ultimately why I found myself wishing that I hadn't rewatched this. You know, Marvel movies at their core rely on the emotional aspect to keep the audiences connected with their films, but recently it just feels like the writers have been building up to these huge emotional moments only to have the momentum ruined by the worst one-liner you have ever heard. Okay, so like, take this scene that I'm about to show you as an example. This is the climax of the movie. This is the culmination of like Jane's entire character arc. And this is the line that we go with when she is about to like really stick it to the bad guy. This is what happens. Okay, here you go. Watch this.
First off, the name is Mighty Thor. And secondly, if you can't say Mighty Thor, I'll accept Dr. Jane Foster! And thirdly, eat my hammer!
I feel like I'm being like cinematically edged, and not in a good way. And with all this lazy writing, I found myself starting to focus more on different aspects of the film, which led me to the question. So when I was watching both of these movies, or at least the parts that I did watch from both of these movies, I found myself enjoying the visual effects in Iron Man much more than the visual effects in Thor. And then I realized that a lot of Marvel's recent movies and TV shows look worse than their first film that came out 14 years ago. How could this be? Well, recently Marvel has come under fire for supposedly overworking and underpaying their visual effects houses that they work with. But before I get to that, let's talk about what the difference between VFX and special effects are. So while visual effects are added in during the post-production process, special effects are usually practical elements used on set, like pyrotechnics. And obviously before VFX were as good as they are today, most movies relied on special effects. But if they're supposedly so good now, why have the past few Marvel movies looked like this? Well, over the past few months, a bunch of visual effects houses have been speaking out against Marvel, calling the company the worst to work for. One Reddit user who works for a VFX house said, "Marvel has probably the worst methodology of production and VFX management out there. They can never fix the look for the show before more than half the allocated time the show is over. The artists working on Marvel shows are definitely not paid equivalent to the amount of work they put in." Another VFX artist that worked on Guardians of the Galaxy said, "Working on Marvel shows is what pushed me to leave the VFX industry. They're a horrible client, and I've seen way too many colleagues break down after being overworked, while Marvel tightens the purse strings." So based on those glowing reviews, it feels like the general consensus from VFX houses is that Marvel movies look worse because they are not paying the houses that they work with an adequate amount of money and giving them an adequate amount of time to finish the work that they started. So the scripts are worse, the VFX are worse, but hey, I'm sure that Marvel has some great, uplifting, rousing messages to help get us through these tough times. Oh. Okay. So who are Marvel movies even for? Because when you take a look at their whole filmography, their politics haven't really changed over time, except with the addition of a few women and people of color to their superhero roster, which shouldn't be a political statement, but I guess it is. There are even times when it feels like Marvel wants to make a comment on the current state of American politics, but they fall short every single time. My mind immediately wanders to Falcon's convoluted and weird speech at the end of Falcon and the Winter Soldier, where you can tell that the writers wanted him to say Black Lives Matter so badly, but they don't actually script him to do so, and they probably never could. So in order to understand why Marvel could actually never put in any sort of radical or even just like moderate politics into their movies, we need to talk about the military entertainment complex. So, the military entertainment complex is a cooperative effort between the United States Department of Defense and the entertainment industry that seeks to strengthen the relationship between these two parties. By working in tandem with the entertainment industry, the Department of Defense tries to strengthen American soft power, or the perception of America, abroad. So, an example of this would be any movie that uses military equipment like Top Gun, Wonder Woman, American Sniper. These all play a role in the military entertainment complex. So when thinking about the MCU, that pretty much includes every single movie, right? Basically what this means is that if a Marvel movie wants to borrow American military equipment from the Department of Defense for filming their movie, the producers of the Marvel movie have to submit the script to the Department of Defense for vetting, in which case the Department of Defense ultimately gets to decide whether or not the message that the Marvel movie is trying to send is indicative of their beliefs or not. And this brings me to the real reason why I wanted to make this video. This tweet. Also, side note, I'm pretty sure that the original tweet got deleted, so I did blur the person's username, but this is the inspiration for this entire video. Marvel will never be able to be anything more than moderate on the political side of things because of the military entertainment complex. Marvel will always have to maintain a pro-America, pro-military stance so that they can keep using the military's toys in their movies. So, of course, they would have to maintain a positive attitude toward Israel and Israeli soldiers, while also somehow still holding contempt for American Jews. They'll never be able to make any sort of firm anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist statement when they are receiving funding from the very people that are capitalist and are imperialist. So the people on the left will never truly be happy with the political statements that Marvel is making or not making. Then, of course, you have the fact that there have been these huge pushes in Hollywood for better representation for previously underrepresented communities, which of course always causes a stir among racists who believe that a man could survive a meteor strike and come out with superpowers, but God forbid he be black. And I know what you're thinking. No, of course they don't. The average American is not thinking this critically about the media they consume, which is fine, it's okay. Not everyone needs to think critically about every single thing all the time. But this is exactly why Marvel can get away with doing this shit. And I find that really interesting because you would think that wishy-washy politics combined with a supposed decrease in quality over time would lead to lower audience and critic reviews for all these movies and TV shows, but that's not the case at all. I averaged the tomato meter and audience score for each piece of MCU media that has come out since Iron Man, excluding any of the TV shows that came out before WandaVision, and the results are inconclusive. On its own, there seems to be no real pattern that Marvel's ratings have gone down over the years. On its own. But here's the thing, the reason why people love the MCU is not for its ability to create amazing standalone movies. It's their ability to weave storylines and tell complex tales that overlap with each other or go into the next movie's end credit scene or whatever. The Marvel Cinematic Universe at its core is a universe. And up to Avengers Endgame, Marvel excelled in connecting seemingly unrelated storylines with relative ease. But when you look at everything after the fact, what Marvel is calling Phase 4, there seems to be really no connecting storylines between the movies except for the occasional bump in here and there. In the past 2 years, Marvel has pumped out 13 different series and films, over a third of their entire catalog, and next to none of it has anything to do with each other. Or when it does, it feels lazy or disingenuous. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Marvel fans are going to be Marvel fans, you know? Like, they're going to go to the theater and they're going to eat up every single little piece of content that Kevin Feige spoon feeds into their little mouths. And they're not dumb for this. No, they're not dumb for this. But I'm allowed to say that. I was a Marvel fan for years. I did the exact same thing. But after the past 2 years being constantly disappointed, I'm kind of over Marvel thinking they can release just any half-baked idea with a funny end credit scene and think that the audience are gonna lap it up. I say no longer. Down with Marvel. Down with Marvel. Down with... Uh-oh. He's right behind me, isn't he?
Boo! Get off the stage.
I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, subscribe, and send it to a friend so that maybe one day I can hire a lawyer to defend me when Kevin Feige sues me for defamation. Yeah, not her.